Few peptides have sparked as much interest among people as BPC-157, but despite the claims online, the question remains, does this peptide really work? Well, I think one of the ways in which we can get to the bottom of this is by looking at the actual clinical trials that have been conducted on this peptide, and that's what I'm going to show you in this video, along with questions that people have asked me about it as well. And if you're here for the very first time, welcome. This review is unbiased. I am not selling this peptide. Rather, I've been investigating dietary supplement research for over 30 years. I am not an employee of any supplement company or pharmaceutical company either, and if you watch this video to the end, you will be an authority on BPC-157. So if you're asking yourself, what the heck is BPC-157? Well, it stands for Body Protection Complex, and if you're searching for this online, it used to be known as PL14736. It was first described in the early 1990s and is actually a synthetic peptide from a larger molecule that occurs in the stomach, which is called GB7. And to be clear, this is a pretty small peptide. It's only 15 amino acids long. That's much smaller than the amino acid sequence of GB7, which is composed of between 60 and 70 amino acids. One of the most contested areas of this peptide is how does it work? One of the more frequently cited mechanisms of BPC-157 is that it appears to stimulate vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF. The increase in vascular endothelial growth factor causes a downstream increase in nitric oxide, which vasodilates, opens up blood vessels, allowing more blood and oxygen and nutrients to get to an injured area. And like a lot of things with this peptide, there is a lot of conjecture here, so I do want to point out that this is just one proposed mechanism by which it works. There are apparently several other ways in which this peptide may confer benefits as well. The reasons why people would want to use BPC-157 are numerous and range from healing ligament and tendon injuries, improving gut health, raising nitric oxide levels, reducing pain, and even improving the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles on the face. Okay, so let's talk about the research on this peptide, and I want to begin by talking about this paper, which claims to be the very first human clinical trial of oral BPC-157. And by the way, the information that I'm going to give you in this section is coming from a webinar on this supplement that I will link to below in the references section, which you can find in the description below. The supplement that's being discussed in this study is called BPC-157 Delayed Pro. And from what I can gather, the study was funded by a company that makes this supplement. However, they do state that an independent lab actually performed the research. Now, generally, I'm okay with this because essentially the company is putting their money where their mouth is. I can respect that because a lot of companies don't actually do this. So what's the paper look like? Well, we've got 101 men and women. They're in their 50s and they have chronic pain that lasted at least 1 month, although they do state that most of these people have had pain for at least 6 months. And they go on to state that most of the pain these people were dealing with stemmed from osteoarthritis and low back pain. The study itself lasted only 1 month and people continued to take their normal pain medicine throughout the investigation. It's reported that the individuals took 2 capsules a day of this BPC-157 Delayed Pro supplement, which each capsule contained 500 micrograms of the peptide, so that means that daily they were taking 1,000 micrograms. I also want to call your attention to the supplement facts label, which not only tells us how much of the peptide this supplement contains, but also another compound called salcaprosate sodium, abbreviated as SNAC. Salcaprosate sodium is an absorption enhancer molecule. In other words, it helps the BPC-157 get better absorbed by the body. And I'll give the company props for this because this is an intriguing approach because some medications also use salcaprosate sodium to enhance their absorption as well. For example, salcaprosate sodium is also used in the oral form of Ozempic to increase its absorption too. So it makes sense that it might work for helping absorption of BPC-157 as well. However, if I can nerd out for a moment, salcaprosate sodium is not technically a dietary supplement. I don't believe it's classified as a dietary supplement according to the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, which has been the law of the land since 1994. So I wouldn't be surprised if the FDA took issue with this compound being used in something that's appearing on a supplement facts label. And while we're on the topic, BPC-157 itself is not a dietary supplement either, but we'll stick a pin in that for a later discussion. Okay, nerd alert over. Back to the study results. What happened here? So they're reporting that people who took this BPC-157 supplement reported significantly less pain, lower degrees of pain interfering with their daily lives, and better quality of pain as well. And I interpret that vague statement to mean how the pain actually felt to these people. So these results are indeed intriguing, but there's a few things I want to call your attention to. The first thing is that there was no placebo group. Everybody in this trial took the supplement, and that opens up the possibility that there may have been a placebo effect occurring in at least some of these people. Another thing, people essentially reported how they felt when they took the supplement, which is fine. However, it appears that there were no before and after medical tests conducted on these individuals. The third thing to know about this paper is that it doesn't appear to have yet been published in a peer-reviewed journal. Nonetheless, it's intriguing, and I hope the company uses this as a jumping-off point to do a larger clinical trial that does include a placebo group. Moving on, what other research is out there for this peptide? And I want to put the emphasis on human clinical trials. Here's a summary of what I found. So we have this paper where BPC-157 was injected into the knees of people who had knee pain. The study lasted an entire year and involved 16 people who received injections of either 2 cc's of BPC-157 alone or in combination with another peptide called TB4. And TB4 is shorthand for thymosin beta-4. Most of these people received one injection at the start of the study, but if they re-injured their knee, they got another shot. After a year, the researchers called these people up on the phone and asked them how they were doing. And here's where things get interesting. 11 out of the 12 people who received the BPC-157 injection by itself reported improvements in their knee pain. That's over 90% of the people saying that this peptide helped them. Impressive, but there are some things to know about. Number one, there's no placebo group where some individuals got a sham injection. Number two, it's a small study only involving 16 people. And the biggest problem with this study, in my opinion, is that they didn't do any before and after medical tests on these people. So we have no idea whether or not BPC-157 regrew back their knee cartilage. I also located this paper which reports that BPC-157 injections are safe. This is a pilot study, an introductory study that involved 2 people, a man and a woman, who received between 10 and 20 milligram infusions of the peptide on separate days. And that's encouraging, but let's remember this study only had 2 people and the study itself lasted basically 3 days. This paper involves 12 women with bladder pain syndrome who were given BPC-157 injections in their bladder area. 10 of those 12 women, about 83%, reported complete resolution of their pain, and the remainder of those women also said that their pain symptoms had improved by about 80%. Here's a summary of the studies that I just presented to you with a few other investigations that I didn't mention. So feel free to stop the video and take a closer look at these papers and what the results were. Now let's talk about some questions that people have asked me about BPC-157, and let's begin with whether or not you can use this peptide as a nasal spray. Obviously, a nasal spray would have significant advantages over both injections and even supplements. So what's the proof for this? So there is indeed some research suggesting that peptides that weigh less than 6,000 Daltons can be absorbed through the nasal passages. And that's intriguing because according to this patent on the peptide, BPC-157 has a molecular weight of between 900 and 1,600 Daltons, which puts it well below that 6,000 Dalton threshold. So in theory, it should be able to be absorbed. The catch, however, is I can't locate any peer-reviewed published human clinical trials involving a BPC-157 nasal spray. That doesn't necessarily mean that research doesn't exist. It may be internal to companies. I, for one, however, would just like to see that research published so everyone can take a look at it. Next question. How long does this peptide stay in the body after you take it before it's eliminated by your liver and kidneys? Following injections of this peptide in laboratory animals, some researchers have reported that the half-life, or time it takes for half of a substance to be eliminated from the body, is about 30 minutes for BPC-157. In other words, the peptide doesn't appear to remain in the body very long. However, that doesn't necessarily mean the biological effects of BPC-157 decline quickly. It's possible that the peptide stimulates downstream metabolites that you can't easily measure by just looking at the half-life of the peptide itself. In fact, some animal research has revealed that metabolites of BPC-157 are found in the urine up to 4 days after the peptide was used. And I know what you're thinking, what's the half-life of oral BPC-157 supplements? And the answer to that is open to speculation. Another question is, do we digest BPC-157 when we take it orally? That's a great question because, again, this is a peptide molecule. If it is digested in the stomach, that might mean that oral supplements really don't work. So this is a logical question to ask. However, according to at least one study, BPC-157 appears to resist digestion for at least 24 hours. Next question, what about topical BPC-157? What happens if you rubbed it on your skin if it was, for example, in a cream formula? So there is some preliminary research on this in animal studies where the animals were basically burned on purpose. Applying the peptide to the skin reduced inflammation and improved the skin's healing process. And that's very interesting. However, whether or not this peptide works the same way in humans or whether it reduces fine lines or wrinkles requires more study. And if you participate in organized sports, you want to listen up because depending on the sport you play, this peptide may not be legal. As you can see from this list, the UFC, NFL, and NBA have singled out BPC-157 as an outright banned substance, while other sports have essentially lumped it into a general ban on all peptides. And in case you're wondering, yes, there is a test that can detect BPC-157 in the urine. So you've been warned. Next question, and this is arguably one of the most controversial questions that people have asked me. Is it possible that BPC-157 causes cancer? Remember, one of the things this peptide is supposed to do is improve angiogenesis, the growing of new blood vessels. Turns out that cancer also needs a good blood supply too. At this junction, the best I could say is there's no evidence that BPC-157 causes cancer. However, if you have cancer or a history of cancer, I absolutely suggest you run this past your physician for the very best advice for you. So I'm genuinely intrigued with some of the results I've seen in the BPC-157 research, but I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that a lot of these studies have problems. Now, I know some people watching me are going to throw caution to the wind and try it, and I get that. So here's the thing. If you're going to think about getting a BPC-157 supplement, do this first. Reach out to a company that you believe in and ask to see their certificate of analysis. A certificate of analysis that was conducted by an independent lab will tell you not only how much BPC-157 is in the supplement, but also whether or not it contains any impurities as well. When you look at that certificate of analysis, look at the name of the lab that conducted that test. Look them up online and see what you see about them. And also look at the name of the person who signed off on that certificate of analysis as well, and look that person up. That'll at least give you some peace of mind that you're using a quality supplement. Share this video with your friends so they know this information too. And don't forget to subscribe so you can keep up with all my other unbiased reviews of supplements.